Hello and welcome to the Collector's Gallery. My name is Romana Kaspar-Kraft, and today on our next segment of Let's Talk Art, we have with us photographer, Calgary-based photographer, Ray Van Nes. Welcome, Ray.
Well, thank you for having me.
Our pleasure. I'm so delighted to have you here. And just to let our audience know, the month of February is celebrated in Alberta with exhibitions for the Exposure Photography Festival. Ray, so you are very well known within Calgary, Alberta. Your knowledge is so extensive on, not just composure of photographs and things, but also the printing process. You've been doing this your whole life. Tell me what got you involved.
Well, in photography, as a teenager, I guess, I had the snapshot camera and did as everybody else did, took I was here pictures. But in the mid-70s, I had a friend who was a bit of a polymath, a painter, a musician, and I saw some of his slides. And his slides were different, that he understood composition and light. And so that got me inspired, and I went out and bought a 35 millimeter camera, and that sort of started me down the road. And eventually I started reading about people like Ansel Adams and other modernist photographers, which then led me into black and white photography, and just kept going from there.
Yeah. I personally am very fond of black and white photography. There's something quite more emotional for me with black and white photography.
Well, it becomes an abstract medium, being it's one step removed from reality, whereas we live in a world of color. So if you're working in color, it's much tougher to be more abstract. So you've already got one step away with black and white or monochrome, being it's not real, and more so now when we have billions of images that are color. So that's the first step.
And now the show that we have on of your work that runs through all of February is called A Modernist View. Tell me about that subject and why you chose that title and how it fits in with your work.
Okay. Well, the photographers that I was influenced by when I was learning about photography were really modernist photographers. Modernism, in some ways, is an anachronism, being it really was happening in the early 20th century. But people like Ansel and Brett Weston were still alive and still producing work in the 70s and 80s, which is when I was learning about this work. So, and then there were people like Bruce Barnbaum and John Sexton, who were sort of the next generation. So it was photography as far as I was concerned, and I've just always used that template to sort of explore the world I see. So even though there's a lot of different subject matter in this show, whether it's industrial or natural world, I see it the same way, because one component of modernism is abstraction. And so I abstract things out of the real world. And so there's a unifying view in this show.
Looking around the show, there's the industrial scenes, the landscape, and then the architectural scenes. And you've also used different papers, different printing techniques. Explain why. For example, these are platinum palladium prints,
Yes.
right? Explain the difference between some of these platinum palladium prints and some of the silver gelatin and then the tone gelatin.
Okay. Well, platinum palladium is a very old process from the 19th century. And without going into great detail, currently the way you make these prints is you have to coat the paper with an emulsion which involves the metals, platinum and palladium, which then are embedded in the paper. And the reason I used that process for that particular series, for example, is it was old industrial. So I wanted a gritty look to it. And more modern silver papers just look too documentary. So I was trying to get away from that, and I couldn't find a combination of toners or papers that just spoke to me. So I ended up doing that.
And it works really well. I love that softness, and it does. It gives it this historical view on things, like an old photograph that has slightly discolored or been slightly bleached and things that it's a moment in time, right?
Yes, well also, and fortunately, like in the time I was photographing at the Turner Valley gas plant, they hadn't really cleaned it up. And so if you notice on the lubricator, there's pigeon feathers, being that they hadn't secured the building, but it has a patina, and I wanted to capture the patina of those surfaces with that medium.
Today's youth often don't understand what's the difference between analog photography and digital photography. They all think it's the same. Tell me, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, my running joke on analog is that no pixels were harmed. Analog is a photochemical process in that whether it's film or glass plates in some cases, there's a chemical coating which has particles of silver that then get shaped with the light interacting with the chemicals to produce an image. Whereas, of course, in digital, light is interacting with a sensor to move pixels around to create the image. But they're very, very different, and they react differently, and so you have a different feel. So I feel in analog, you have a lot more scope for different things to happen, because some of the cameras, and I use some older lenses in some cases, which have a different character than the very modern, perfect lenses. And different papers have a different feel for the mood or whatever I'm looking for in a particular series. In the landscape, I was being very just about the form and the light, and so it's pretty straightforward, whereas I've toned the architectural stuff because it's almost unexpected that it's, again, removing a sort of documentary feel from the work. So I toned it using a toner of my personal mix. And then film, it's either a strip or a sheet of plastic, very thin, with a coating on it, which you cannot hold out in the light because you'll ruin it. So it's held in the dark in your camera or in a film holder until you, in a precise way, allow light through a lens to fall on that and make the image. And of course, it's the opposite of reality. It's a negative, and you then need to print it to make a positive, which is the print.
So today, people don't understand, can't relate to this lengthy process of developing, especially just the fact that you can't see what you're taking a picture of except through the little viewfinder. So what happens in the developing process is somewhat of a revelation, because you have an idea, because you're skilled at seeing the subject and cropping it in your viewfinder and stuff, but you don't really know until it gets there in the developer. And then that whole process of developing.
Couple of things.
Yep.
Well, I'm going to refer back to good old Ansel there. He had several things he talked about. One is called pre-visualization, which is learning your craft so you knew what was going to happen. You knew how this film, a particular film, was going to respond to the light and a filter or whatever you're using, and how it was going to translate to the paper. So the first thing is, and he talked about that when he was looking at something, the famous Moonrise over Hernandez image by him, he lost his light meter. So he said, well, the moon is this and this is this, and he figured out what to do to make the exposure. And then the second thing was that once you had this negative, he said that's the score and the print is the performance.
Wonderful way of putting it, because yes, you have to adjust everything. You have to know everything before you even take that shot.
Yes.
For it, whereas, today with digital cameras, it's click, 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 click. I'm going to get it at some point here. I mean, for a lot of people that think, photography is simple and stuff, and then they put it on the computer and edit it all there.
Yes, well, I do it in my head.
Yeah, and that's why I love the analog process, and I respect it and things, because there is so much more going on than just the image you see in the end. So this is the industrial sort of part of the show. There's a few other images around as well, and we can come over and move on to here. Here we have some silver gelatin prints.
Yes.
Which it's probably the most common type of printing out there,
Yes.
Isn't it?
Yes. Well, there are companies that still make the paper with the emulsion on it. In platinum, in the early 20th century and late 19th century, companies actually made coated paper. So they just bought a box of paper, put their negative on it, went out in the sun, and made an image. Silver gelatin is much faster and more contrasty.
Yeah.
And you can play around with much more easily being in an enlarger, where you can lighten or darken different parts of the print. In the platinum, it's pretty much whatever happens.
And also, I would imagine as you're coating, depending on how much of that coating you put on, you're not always going to get an even
No.
layer. So
No.
that can affect it
Yes.
too.
Yes.
So yes, with
silver
it
printing,
pre-coated.
which is probably 90% of what I do, has a lot of control. If you want to compare it to digital, I make the control while I'm making the print. In digital, they spend all the time on the computer horsing around with the image, whether it's a scan or a scanned negative, to get the image the way they want. And then the printing is rather mechanical.
Yeah.
Whereas the printing here, every print here, and even silver printing with a manufactured product, each batch of paper is slightly different.
I love how you've taken sections of pieces and created this abstracted image. For me, this image, is it small? Is it large? How close are we? What are we actually looking at? It plays with.
Oh, the Badlands are just delightful for that, because of all the texture that the land has. So you don't know if these are boulders or rocks only this big.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Occasionally, you'll see something, a little weed growing up, and you realize, okay, it's only this big.
Yeah.
But that's
this is,
the-
yeah, absolutely.
Because I've been to some of these places many times, and a different time of year, different light, and you'll see different things every time. And so the Badlands are just wonderful for just infinite variety of things to see. And of course, there's nothing literal. I mean, that one is probably the most literal, because you can see it's a big thing, whereas the rest is it's just patterns. And those patterns, if it's a gray day, they don't exist.
Here you've used the silver gelatin process for that, and you've also used that and some toned silver gelatin
Yes.
prints with your architectural work. So maybe we can move over there and talk a bit about that. So follow us. So Ray, I love this wall in particular too. I love the simple, clean lines, the shapes of your architectural work. They're so just crisp and composed. And tell me a bit about how you decided to do these just fragments of architecture.
Well, back to the form and light. That's what I'm always seeking. I mean, this one is very rectangular, very Mondrian-esque. My apologies to Mondrian.
Very apt, though.
Yes.
Very apt.
And there's just lots of interesting things happening. I mean, including the texture in the foreground, which is ice.
Ice, yeah. No.
I photographed that in November of that year. The architect, on one hand, created the form, like the music center. And so I've just sliced out some of that form and abstracted it as opposed to the whole building. That's the fun of the images. The four, they were taken with a camera that I built that just does horizontal pictures. And the negative is the size of that print.
And I love that shape.
Yes.
It lends itself so well to your subject and what you're trying to create
Yes.
in terms of
Well,
that
it's
modernist
fun working
kind of
with
quality.
You know, you think of modern architecture downtown Calgary, it's this way, it's all vertical. And most people, that's what they try and do. They do a vertical. And so running around with a horizontal camera, you've created limitations for yourself. So to get an interesting image, you have to work with the fact that you're doing a slice this way.
Images and see how international in feel the architecture of Calgary really is.
Yes. Well,
And
one behind you, of course, is out of the picture, but that was by Norman Foster, who was a British architect, who was also well known for a building in London called the Swiss Ray Building, aka the Gherkin, which looks like a pickle.
Yep.
But the Bull Building here in Calgary, I've made many images because I keep finding it's this curved shape opens up lots of opportunity for different compositions.
I would like to thank you, Ray, for joining us today and showcasing his work, A Modernist View. I'd also like to say visit all the other exhibitions for exposure that are around. There's some wonderful works out there, and if you get a chance, they're well worth going to see. Thank you. Until next time and our next Let's Talk Art show, I say if you like this video, click subscribe, and we look forward to you viewing our next show. Thank you.